Welcome to The State of Us. Real people with honest opinions and the future of responsible media. Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
About 27% of high school students report using tobacco products in 2017, and of those, 75% are using e-cigarettes. This data reported by the Wall Street Journal in the November 16th edition, as the FDA is proposing a menthol ban and curbing flavored e-cigarettes. So what does this mean? And why do you care? Well, we have somebody here who's very well situated to answer those questions, none other than
your friendly redneck liberal, Lance Jackson.
Man, didn't get that crossword puzzle today, so I listened to the opening. I'm a real people. That's kind of cool. Real people talking about real issues.
Yeah.
The trusted
first time you noticed that?
I mean, I just kind of, I'm always busy prepping for the show still as the intro comes or getting that one last clue done. And it's like, it just hit me today. I'm a real person. So I have to tell them why they care. I don't, well,
there's a few different ways you can care.
I'm libertarian here.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Well, you could care about
freedoms
from an economic perspective.
I care about freedoms,
or from that perspective.
That's the
maybe you think
where I care.
Right.
The big hand of government needs to back off.
Okay. Well, see, you could care from that angle.
That's the angle that I care from.
You and your libertarian buddies.
That's right.
So, used to be conservative buddies in there too, but these days, who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, they're, expand the deficit.
I don't know.
All that. So
this is like my age-old
and
argument.
Democrats are curb the debt. So it's, who knows what's going on, but
no, this is just the age-old argument I used to make in class that we ban all these things that are quote bad for us, but we let them sell double cheeseburgers at McDonald's, or your favorite fast food place. So, I mean, it's not the government's responsibility to get into my life, what I put into my body. So
we've got the overview there from Lance on his opinion, but why else might people care other than if you're on Lance's side of the big hand of the government?
Oh, well, then you want to care because you want to save all the little children of the world. And you want to keep them safe and healthy.
You could care from an economic standpoint because we're talking about if menthol is banned in cigarettes, removing a third of all the cigarettes sold annually. So you got to bet that's a little dab of money.
Yeah.
That's going away from our.
Oh, but I thought you were going to go I thought your economic argument was going to be the number of healthy people. So we'd save in healthcare.
That's my point though, right? There's a lot of different angles, whether it's a humanistic perspective here of we care about the people and keeping them healthy, or whether it's purely the numbers, we care about the damage to the industry, or we care about the upside of more people who are healthier equals less strain on the healthcare system.
Not only damage to the industry, but to the states who collect tax dollars off of this.
There's a whole, and that's hopefully what I'm highlighting here is there's a lot of different ways you could care. So hopefully you do, because there's a lot of different data points to talk about here. So we're going to try to keep it more concise and look at a couple different stats as we start to try to answer. We're looking to answer 3 questions today. Do you support the ban? That'd be Lance and I. To what extent should the U.S. government regulate drug use? And then is there a problem with high school kids and tobacco use? So those are the 3 things we're looking to answer. And then, of course, talk about if we say, yes to any of those or that there's a problem, then in the back half of the show there, we want to talk about, well, what do we do about those things? Let's be proactive here and try to figure out how we can help solve the problems that we're identifying. So we'll look at all that, but just so that everybody understands, I mean, I think the headline's pretty clear. On Thursday, the Food and Drug Administration said it was working on banning menthol-flavored cigarettes and cigars. That rule could take a year or more to finalize and another year for it to be enforceable in the marketplace. So you're looking at 2 years out before this would actually take effect and, change the way that if you're a smoker today and you're listening and you buy menthol cigarettes, you're looking at least 2 years before this could seriously impact your usage. However, there's a few different data points here that I think are worth mentioning. U.S. smokers who said in a 2017 survey they smoked menthol cigarettes in the past 30 days. For whites, it's at about 25%. Asian is at about 42, Hispanics at a little more than 42, and black is at 80, a little above 80%. So interesting demographic breakdown there on preferences of menthol versus not. Any thoughts on why that would be, Lance? Not that that's really the subject of what we're talking about. Just kind of found it.
I was going to say, really, you're going to bring race into this? That's what I thought.
I didn't bring it into this.
Well, you read it,
but
you didn't have to read it. You could have skipped that part.
But it is odd.
So now
isn't it?
We're going to.
I mean, why is
the
there?
FDA is going to pass this law because they want black people to stop smoking. So it's 80% of them use menthols.
But there's got to be a reason, right? I mean, it's not just, well, you're black, so you must like menthol cigarettes better. It has something to do with socioeconomic or something, right? Or, I mean, is it just random? It just so happens that black people prefer menthol cigarettes?
That I don't know. Being a lifelong
I thought it was
non-smoker,
interesting from that standpoint.
I don't know why it tends to curb that way.
So
I always knew that growing up, women seemed to smoke menthols.
Yes.
But I grew up typically surrounded by white smokers. So I don't necessarily know why. It must be just, it's something that
it's a flavor thing.
Sure.
It's I mean, as I understand it, the big push here, according to the FDA, is what they're trying to do is curb teen smoking. Something that's, been a thing they've been working on supposedly for many years. But haven't we
seen a rise in teen, even though, quote, we've had all this stuff on trying to get people to stop smoking and all these, laws that have been passed to stop smoking in public and in restaurants and in closed environments. Through all those years, we've still seen an uptick of smoking among teenagers.
So for the data that we have available in front of us from 2011 through 2018, it was actually it was falling, with the exception of 14, 15, and 18. Those are the 3 years where it didn't decline. It actually increased. However, every year, all tobacco products except for e-cigarettes has decreased since 2011, the use of tobacco products.
Because it's easier to get a hold of.
Well, and so...
I mean, why do teens smoke? I know I'm supposed to be the answer, not the question.
Yeah, I mean, that's...
Well, it's because it's illegal. I'm going to try this.
Right.
This is what I see adults do. That's why I'm going to try it.
Just like teens.
Just like teen. And come on. Let's give me all that other stuff. But having raised kids and been around children and my whole life, the more you make a rule against something, the more you're going to find teenagers
trying to do it.
Because that's just...
I mean, anybody.
That's the growth of...
If there's a rule, people try to figure out how to get around it.
Well, yeah, to some, but you kind of stop that as an adult because it's like, for the most part, you figure out how you're going to live, and so you don't really worry about it too much. But as a teenager, they're telling me I can't do this, so what am I missing? And then as you get to be an adult, you've tried everything that you're interested in trying, and you're pretty much settled down into a pattern of how you're going to live. You don't have to experiment because if you think you're missing something, it's legal for you to try it. So once you make it illegal, of course, you're going to see a rise in the number of young people who want to try it because what are you keeping from me?
I don't know. I have to think about that one, son, because I think about the adults I know. I mean, how many times have you gone a mile or more over the speed limit? How many times have you not worn your seatbelt in a car? How many times have you, in the middle of the night, gone through a red light because nobody was coming? How many times have you not stopped for 3 seconds at a stop sign? How many times? I mean, I could just keep going, right? Adults always have this idea, and I'm obviously a quote unquote adult. What separates adults from kids, that's a different conversation. But I think adults often cite, well, kids are just naturally way more rebellious than adults. Are they naturally more rebellious, or are they just rebellious against the things that adults don't want them to do? Because I think adults are rebellious against things that the government tells them they shouldn't do, like that you should wear a seatbelt. And some people say, well, no, I'm not going to let the man tell me I need to wear a seatbelt. I'm not going to wear a seatbelt, or they say the speed limit's 55, but I know it's safe to go 65. I mean, those are the same kinds of things. They're conscious choices to go against the man, whoever it is, because, whatever. I think it's a human thing to not like to be told what the rules are that govern your life. Even people who like for the government to do things, like to take care of them, they still complain about the government doing other things they don't like. I have not met a person yet in my life who can't tell me something they dislike about the government. You know, a rule, a law, a policy, something that they don't have a gripe about, that they think is dumb, you know, that is the way that it is. I use the seatbelt one because, at least from this area where I'm from, I had friends, I've had other adults that I've talked to who all cite that as, well, why is that a law? You know, why are you telling me that I have to be safe? And it's not that I disagree with that on a logic standpoint, but on a purely what is the law and is the law being broken? Well, maybe more people would wear seatbelts if it wasn't a law, because then there wouldn't be a reason to rebel against it. It's, well, you can wear it because the data tells us that you're way safer wearing it and you're way less likely to die, or you can not wear it. And the government doesn't care if you wear it or not because it's your life. And if you want to be dumb and not wear it, that's your choice, you know? But again, so I don't know. That's why I'm saying I'd have to give it some thought more on if our kids really more rebellious, or do we just notice their rebellion more because they're rebelling against things we've accepted? You know, they're rebelling against the things that we can legally do. So, and we rebel against the things that nobody can legally do. You know, nobody's allowed to speed, except for cops if they're, pursuing, quote unquote, somebody else. So does that make sense where I'm coming from there on? I just have to give it more thoughts.
But I think I was figuring you'd stick to your psychology background, which shows that teenage years people tend to be more rebellious than as they get older. I didn't say that. But
that goes back.
I didn't say that adults weren't rebellious.
Right.
I just said teenagers
are more.
That's the stage where growing up, people are most rebellious is their teenage years. I never once said that adults aren't rebellious. Mm-hmm. I'm saying teenagers
are more
rebellious. We all were at that age. It's just an age of,
because you're trying to figure things out.
Psychoanalytic development to where you're trying to, well, what's good? Why are they saying no about this stuff?
Kind of like with our the placebo effect that we talked about. I don't think there's a lot of data out there on it, but I'd be interested in finding out. You know, we don't study much about adult rebellion in terms of these kinds of things. If we did a study and then we figured out what's the percent difference, you know, because we talk about how rebellion teens are, but I think it would be appropriate for a conversation like this for us to have a better understanding of what is the difference. You know, are they 10% more rebellious or are they 60% more rebellious? Because that's telling. I mean, if they're only a few percentage points more rebellious than us, then it's a matter of our perception is just, you know, that they're really rebellious. And I'm not saying you said that. It's something that I think
but there's an old saying that most people obey most of the laws most of the time because we don't have enough jail space, nor do we have enough police officers to enforce all the laws. So for our society to function in any kind of decorum, with any kind of decorum and regularity, most of us have to obey most of the laws. So yeah, you picked out ones that are obviously where people are rebellious.
Yeah.
But how many of those 98 out of 100, 99, whatever the study would show, where we follow the law, that we stop at the red light, that we don't ram into cars on purpose because they're in the parking spot that we want. We don't, go egg our bosses' houses like we did as teenagers, even though we want to because we're mad at them. We don't, so we do follow the rules because we know there are things that will happen to us that we don't want to do it. So how many times do adults subconsciously follow the rules versus how often they consciously try to break those rules?
Right. Well, and then same thing, obviously,
because they understand
the
circumstances. Whereas young people, teenagers, don't have that. They don't understand. I know if I jump off a roof right now, I not only would break my leg, I'd probably hurt myself pretty badly because I'm not very agile. But when I was 13, I jumped off a lot of things, a lot higher than the roof of my house, and survived. Why? Because I wasn't scared that I was going to get hurt because I didn't realize I could get hurt.
Right.
Now I know I could get hurt, so I'm not climbing any higher than a 6-foot ladder.
Somebody hold this ladder. Yeah.
Why? No. Because I know what could happen to me. When I was a teenager, I didn't know. So I jumped off of a lot of different things that I wouldn't even think about jumping off of now.
Yeah. I don't know. I think
I'm following the rules.
That was a side piece. I didn't mean to get too far sidetracked.
Well, I had to defend myself.
I know. Well, and like I said, it wasn't really, it's not just so much.
Because you made it sound like adults are just going around breaking rules all the time.
Well, we are.
And we don't.
Whether it's a legal rule or a societal rule or,
No, we follow most of them. You brought up the few that
I think it keeps
most people would think about breaking would be okay.
I'm saying I'd be interested to find out the truth behind that statement.
So somebody doing a doctoral thesis out there, pick that, and we've just done your doctoral thesis work for you. You go out and do the surveys and write it all up for us.
Well,
we picked your topic.
I'll just provide this as an example. It's around when surveyed American adults, how often do you lie? It was something around 80% of adults not only were off, but they were off by double digits on the percentage of the time in which they lie. They tell lies. And most of us, not the average, most U.S. adults lie an average of 3 times a day. Okay. And that might be surprising to you.
And most teenagers lie between 10 and 15 times a day.
But
same study.
But my point is on all of that, it's easy for all of us because the way society functions, like you said, is this accepted, we all have to accept certain protocol and rules about how we operate. Like we accept, that X people are more inherent to do X things, that kind of thing. Doesn't mean that that's false. It just means we accept those things because that's part of how society functions. We accept that teenagers have to be taken care of because that's how it's been, as long as you and I have been alive. That's the way it works, is teenagers they need to be taken care of. Of course, if we go back several hundred or a couple thousand years, that's not how it worked, I mean, shoot, as soon as you can walk on your own 2 feet and as soon as you're ready to have sex and reproduce, by God, you're out on your own. We can't take care of you anymore. I mean, that's, so my point is, I think it changes based on societies. And there's even some today in the world where, you get to, your early teen years and it's time for you to start a family and for you to go be an adult. It's time to become a man or a woman or whatever, So not to say that you're ready, but that's like saying that, because you turn 18, you're ready to be an adult. I don't think anybody's ever ready to be an adult. Anyway, we got off on that, but I think it's an interesting conversation, and I do think it's relevant because part of us talking about, do we need to be protecting, quote unquote, protecting kids from these things is relevant to, do they need to be protected from these things or should they make those choices themselves? So the menthol ban, Lance, this applies not only to cigarettes, it applies to tobacco products, banning menthol in cigarettes, and the goal being banning menthol also in cigars and other tobacco products. Good or bad? Because this is for everybody. It's not, if you're under this age, it's all tobacco products. Like we said, a third of cigarette sales would be wiped out by this.
I don't like tobacco, but it's not my place to tell other people, and it's not the government's place to tell other people what they can or cannot consume.
So your congressman calls you up and says,
I'd say vote against this.
Right. Don't let the ban go through.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, for me personally, I don't like tobacco. Yeah. I think it's dirty. I don't like the smell. I don't like, the smell.
But if other people want to do it,
but if they want to do it, that's their business. I mean, I don't have to let them do it in my house. I don't have to whatever. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I can still control my environment, but as far as what people do on their own and they want it, then who am I to tell them that they can't? Who's the government, even more importantly, to tell them that they can't do these things?
So this leads into the next question, which we'll answer here in just a moment. I think there's a lot of people that answer that way. And honestly, I've been on the fence about this. I go back and forth because the next question is kind of, where do we draw the line? Where does that come in? And that goes back to your point of these societal things we've accepted. We draw the line for some people at some points and we cross the line at other points and all that. So we're going to look at that next. But before we do, What are we doing here? Why are we here today?
I'm trying to figure that out today.
Okay.
What am I doing here?
I don't know what's going on.
Well, I know what TrueChat's doing here today.
Oh, what's TrueChat?
TrueChat's mission
Okay.
is to educate people by providing honest, open, and respectful conversations.
You think we're getting that done?
I'm trying to be respectful. I think you're being respectful.
Okay.
You're always respectful.
I try.
Sometimes I'm not as respectful.
It can be difficult.
But I'm trying to be respectful.
It can be challenging.
Yeah.
I don't think so much with us and the people we have on. I feel like most of our guests we don't have a ton, but when we do have them, I feel like generally, right, they're pretty good conversations. Even if you and I don't exactly like something they say, I think you and I do a pretty good job of thinking about it, and letting the listeners know that we're actually pondering what they're talking about and not just, oh, well, they're stupid. But if you don't think that's the case, we encourage you to let us know. ethics@truechat.org. You can email that address and they'll take a look at it. So it's your job to keep us accountable, and we'll try to keep politics and information accountable for you. That's this process, that societal contract we've got, social contract. So with that, Lance, where do we draw this line? And just so that I'm not squirming out of the last question, I do hedge toward, and I would even say if I had to choose one, right? I guess I would choose yes, I support it because of the kid factor, because of that. I think, and this is where this next question to me is the one that's even more important than do you support this ban? Because I think this by default answers this next thing, of where do we draw this line? Because by extension then, right, you've got a lot of people out there now that are going to say, okay, well, Lance, does that mean that you support, allowing adults to use methamphetamine and other illicit, incredibly addictive drugs that can be, very damaging or life-threatening to them?
Oh, is that what it leads to?
I mean, it's an easy extension, right?
Okay.
If the government shouldn't tell me what I can do with my body,
right,
then does that extend to other drugs?
Yes.
Okay. And that extends to...
I'm consistent. Yes.
Uh-huh.
And again, the government doesn't have to take care of me. And if I commit crimes against society, if I break other rules because of what I consume, then they can step in and jail me for those crimes that I have committed. But consuming what I want to consume is none of their business.
And so then do we also have to legalize the creation and distribution of these drugs?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not being facetious. I'm right. I know.
We don't have to.
I'm just saying in your world,
we can keep doing it.
That's what we would do.
Sure.
And there's definitely not only the argument that Lance is putting forward, but another piece of that argument, like you had brought up, is when things aren't illegal, both adults and children, maybe children more so, but they're all less likely to go against. I mean, if they're not illegal, they can't go against. There's nothing to go against, right? You either use it or you don't, and the government doesn't care either way. Nothing happens to you other than the health side effects. So does that include age too?
But that's not necessarily true, because historically, wear my historian hat here, most people always want to argue, well, Prohibition didn't work. More people drank during Prohibition, the government's experiment with alcohol between, 1919 and 1933. But the numbers, the facts show that no, alcohol consumption did go down during the Great Depression.
Because most people follow most of the laws most of the time.
What happened was government and the American people didn't want to pay for the enforcement of said rule. So if you open it up, okay, and say none of this stuff is illegal, more people are going to use it. I'm not going to sit here and say, well, if you make it, because the facts show that if you make it legal, more people will use it. I'm not going to argue that if you open it up, less people will use it. That's not my argument. My argument is that's up to the individual to choose.
What about age? Because that's the last piece of it. Everything you've said so far.
I got no problem with age.
Okay.
Because that's where parenting comes in. And why should the government be the parents?
For the kids that don't have responsible parents.
Should the school? Why should the schools be the parents? That's not my job. Society's job is not to be the parents to everybody else. So the school system's job is not to be children's parents. That's not what they're supposed to do. That's supposed to be their parents.
How much, historically, how much though was left up to parents to provide the education? This idea of every child goes to public school to learn, to learn these subjects that we would, that we say they need to learn.
But they didn't. 150 years ago, they didn't.
Right.
States were just beginning to require that students went to school. It was up to the parents to decide how much to educate their child based on their religious beliefs and the need to read the Bible, or they're going to be farmers. And so I'm going to educate them on how to milk a cow
so do you think
how
it's
to fix it.
Bad that it's gone the way it has as far as education goes.
I'm just saying, don't throw on the education system that they are the parents of these children. That's not what they signed on to do. So don't push parenting onto the school system. They were hired and taxes are collected to educate these children, to teach them to read, write, do math, whatever it is that their state used to be their local municipality, but now it's whatever their state or federal government says they have to learn, which I don't agree with either. It should be all done at the local level.
But then and this is where
but they're not parents.
We head down the rabbit hole here of, so by that, I'm not going down a rabbit hole. I'm making it plain as it's right there. There's no hole to go down. Well,
schools should not be expected to be the parent of these children. And they are. Which is why kids aren't learning as much.
So then we should remove things like sex education from schools.
We already have. There's very few schools.
But I'm saying we should continue to get rid of it and not advocate for it to be improved.
What are you supposed to teach?
You're supposed to, you should teach what, it's like the climate change. It's like the climate change
Whose
thing,
values
right?
do we teach in sex ed?
And it's like the facts that we talk about with, Trump. There's this whole thing right now where there's these, we even had this in our philosophy discussion the other day, right? What truth is the truth that we're going to all work off of? Well, I think the education system is built on the principle of we're going to teach things based off of what most people and most science or experts, in these areas accept as the way to do it.
But I'm teaching. I'm not being a parent.
But it's not
my responsibility to raise your children. It's my responsibility to teach what you've decided you want your children to know, not to be their parents.
And then you would get into, if everything goes back to a completely localized system, that there would be school districts where there are aggressive sex ed classes that are taught, that are teaching religious-based principles, and you'd have others that are teaching the complete opposite and some that teach none. And you'd have a population that is very splintered on, even more splintered today, probably than what is and is not accepted facts just around sex ed. This is just an easy example because there's a lot of controversy on what to teach.
That's why it's out of the school system, is because nobody can agree on what needs to be taught. Because everybody's parents want them to, so let the parents teach what they want to teach.
I don't know. I think
so. We have to teach your sex values.
No,
we have to teach my sex values.
You can teach whatever.
Whose values do we teach?
At home, you can teach whatever values you want. At school, we teach.
Well, why should it be taught at school?
Just like with English, we teach, just like with history, we teach what somewhere between, 60 and 90% of the experts or society has accepted as the truth. Just like with American history.
I don't know. I didn't, because I was called on the carpet many times.
Yes.
Because I said there shouldn't be.
But you were weird.
There shouldn't be a Columbus Day.
Yeah.
Why are we
But that was odd.
To honor a person who committed horrible crimes against humanity?
Mm-hmm. And then you have people who argue, good old Neil deGrasse Tyson argued why Christopher Columbus is the most important person in American history. You know,
so we're two adults and we can have a discussion.
Mm-hmm. I guess what I'm getting at here is I think we're opening a whole can of worms on. I mean, by saying, you know, things
and
like
he did
sex
that
ed
because
are subjective.
Of being the astronomer and following the stars to find a new world. He didn't have anything. Tyson wasn't saying anything about what kind of person and the death and destruction that Christopher Columbus brought to the world.
Right.
He was looking at it merely from the scientific value of Christopher Columbus.
Well, and by similar extensions, you have the founding fathers that we put on a high pedestal who, you know, and for better or for worse, they made a compromise and they condoned the continuation of slavery for another umpteenth years, right? Yeah. I mean, so it's just, it's easy to
and we
pick
should
that
talk
out.
about that.
You can say they're an important person in history,
and the
but
manipulation
they're a bad...
and the manipulation of women and everything else that our founding fathers did. But anyway, I'll get back to, because now you are going down the rabbit hole.
I know. Well, that's what I'm
not.
saying.
No, you're going down it because I'm not. Because I'm saying everything you want talks about parenting for the school system, and I'm like, no, that's not the school system's job.
I guess the point I'm getting at is, to an extent, what we are teaching today. You know, we're saying, well, we're teaching it because they're the subjects that kids need to know. Well, isn't that? And that goes back to
I said we should be. We don't.
Yeah.
We do what you say. We teach what society accepts as what children need to know. That doesn't mean we're teaching them what they need to know. We're teaching them what society or what the government says they need to know.
The only problem the only reason, and this is where I always get caught up on this because we have to wrap up, and I guess we'll leave our listeners to kind of think about this. And if you have something that's quick. I get caught up on children do not choose their parents. And so if they are, you know, it's no fault of the child's that they get a drug addict of a parent or a parent who does not provide them any education on drugs, you know, or anything like that, or any guidance at all. And not just drugs, sex, everything else, right? It's to no fault of that child's who legally, we have deemed in this country, you know, to be under the protection of their guardians and under the protection of the state until they are of legal age to make these decisions about their life, you know, driving.
So the government
drinking,
teach them how to eat, drink, and sleep because their parents don't.
So, and that's what I'm getting at. Is what you're suggesting that we have zero responsibility in the greatest country on earth to children who have parents who do not care?
I'm just asking you, what do we teach? I didn't say that. I said, what are we supposed to teach them? Whose morals and values are we teaching?
And that's where you have to go back to.
We're going to turn them all into vegetarians. We're going to turn them into vegans.
You have to.
We're going to say they have to sleep 6 hours a day, 10 hours a day, that they have to do their homework, that they don't have to do their homework, that they need to learn how to read Latin. I know we're out of time and I'm not trying to go on, but I'm not going to let you put words in my mouth even if we go over our time limit. I'm saying what do we choose then to teach them as their in locus parentis, that the school, the court system has deemed that the schools can act in place of the parents when enforcing certain laws at the school. Okay. I'm not saying I like that. That's what I'm saying is because I don't know what you want, you know, because different parents want different things taught to their children. And then you have this group of people out there who aren't teaching, who are not, help me here with the word, reliable, who aren't taking their job of parenting seriously.
Right. They're not.
And then you're saying that it's the responsibility of the school system. No, it's not. It may be the responsibility of society, but why is it the school system? And even if it's the responsibility of society, then which set of rules do you teach them? Do you teach them it's okay to eat red meat? No, it's not okay to eat red meat. Do you teach them, no, you can smoke. No, tobacco is okay if that's what you want because it's a stimulant and it keeps you awake and your mind works better. Or do you say, well, these drugs are, quote, illegal or they're against my religious beliefs? Or, oh, wait a minute, I don't have any religious beliefs, so I'm not going to teach you religious beliefs. So where I understand what you're saying, that there are children out there who need to be taught things.
But you want to know what we should be teaching them.
But how do you decide what you're going to be teaching. No, I don't want to know what we should be teaching them because I don't think society or schools have the right to decide that. If you grow, a lot of this world is, do what you can with the life that you're given. If you're given a rough way to start, I'm sorry. There are people out there, I'm one of them, that's willing to help you. But at some point you have to pick yourself up from your own bootstraps and do what you can and seek out those that will help you with what you need help to do. You can't constantly have other people deeming and telling you what you should and should not do.
I think that, and that goes back to why, for me, this has always been a challenging topic, because this is where, like I said before, where this line is drawn that becomes the problem for me. I am not okay with accepting that, well, there are kids, because this goes back to our poverty conversation about this notion and belief that Americans have, many Americans, that people are poor because they're stupid. No. Some people are poor because they're stupid. I mean, some people are poor because they've been given chances again and again, and people have tried to help them and they've tried to educate them, and they're still poor. But that's not most of them. I mean, we learned that the other day. Lance read all those stats on air about how a third of Americans living in poverty are children, My point with that is, as we discovered through those stats, the biggest encumbrance to them getting out of poverty is realizing how to get out of poverty. It's not that they don't want to, it's that they don't know, because there's no one who's ever been there to tell them that. Just like there's no one who's ever been there to tell them, sometimes you got to pick yourself up. I mean, I grew up in a house and in an area of the country, I think, that is in a lot of ways around that idea of, you have to be, to an extent, a little tough. And to an extent, you have to be able to take care of yourself and pick yourself up when you get knocked down. That was a thing that was a big part of, the sports teams I was on. That was something my parents, time and again. So is that something I would have inherently been able to come up with on my own? I have no idea, because the whole time I was growing up, it was everywhere, everywhere that I was a constant reinforcement by adult or educational or information sources that I had access to that told me that, basically, when the going gets tough, you got to get going. That's how that works, and you can't just sit around and hope that it'll get better. But there's many people who don't grow up in an environment like that. They grow up in just wondering how they're going to eat later today. They don't, nobody's ever taught them that. So I guess that's, to me, where this problem comes in with these kids that we're talking about right now, because that's really what this is all about. That's how it all loops back. The FDA is doing this, at least they're saying, because of the kids. It's not about the adults who use menthol, because again, we've accepted they have that choice, right? They can do that if they want to. It's about the kids. Great. If a kid's been educated on it, and their parents are okay with it, and their parents have shared the concerns and all this, and they choose to do it, that's different than a child who is born addicted to a drug, that they didn't have any choice in, or they grow up in a house where there is no parental guidance of any kind on it, and they're left to, they show up at an emergency room one day dying, and they're told, well, yeah, that's because you're using this drug. And they said, well, I didn't realize that it could do this to me. I didn't know that it was this bad. I mean, I've heard people say that drugs are bad, but I didn't know that, it would do this. I guess I don't accept that we as a society don't have the ability to figure out a better solution than the way it is right now, which is pretty much kind of, as you had highlighted, this middle ground between, we're going to educate them fully versus we're just going to leave them out to dry. It's kind of in between there. It's like, no, the state will take them in and we'll put them in these facilities with these people that we say are approved to be parents that'll kind of sort of help raise them, even though they're probably going to get bounced around a lot. So it's really not, it's kind of like we couldn't make up our minds. We feel bad, so we want to do something. But what we're doing is really, it's not all the way to being a parent, and it's not being a parent. It's somewhere in the middle ground. It's like, well, this is better than nothing, so I guess we'll do this. And I just have to believe that there's a better answer.
But I've talked as being a parent, I've been in a room full of parents and a situation comes up. And if there's 10 sets of parents, there will be 10 different ways to handle it. Mm-hmm. So which set of parents' ideals are we going to choose from to teach these children that you want to teach?
And well, that's where I go back to what I just said, which is I don't accept that society, that we as smart people, and I don't mean you and I just mean, educated individuals in this country who spend a lot of time contemplating issues can't figure out something better. Because I don't know. I mean, the easy answer, right, would be, well, we'll we'll do polls, and whatever the most popular answer is, that's what we'll go with, because at least then they're getting
because my belief system may not win. I don't want a bunch of people raised under my belief system. Well, but I don't think that everybody ought to be raised under my belief system, because that's what makes us America. Is that we're not going to dictate what people think and how they live and what they do. That's an authoritarian government, and that's not what we're supposed to be about. We're supposed to have the right to choose on how we want to raise our children, as long as, again, we're not harming them. And if we harm them, then we have rules in place. Okay. But and I understand that. I understand the logic, and you have to take care. But if you give children to me to raise, I will raise them with my values. But there are going to be people out there who don't want children raised with my values. And I understand that. Mm-hmm. So where's your answer when you say you're going to throw it on the school system or on society to educate these children? My only question to you is, under whose values do we raise them?
Well, and that's what I was just saying. I don't know what the answer to that is.
There isn't one. That's my point. I always say, what's the solution? In this case, I don't think there is one. This is where I think, and now maybe I'm not being respectful, but you and I have had these conversations. This is where I think you want something that's not achievable, that you can't do that, because there's too many with all of it's really easy, if you want everybody to conform and follow the rules, to know what to teach.
Well, and it's funny, this goes back to our placebo effect thing again, when we talked about the different schools of thought. See, this is where I think you and I deviate on the Aristotle versus Socrates ideals. The Socrates ideals and idealism generally being the thinking that all the answers exist. We may not know them yet, right, but they are out there. There is an answer to every question. There is an explanation for everything. We're either not smart enough, or we just haven't found it yet. That's the thinking, versus the realism perspective of, no, there aren't answers to every question, or there aren't ways to explain everything, no matter how advanced or how smart or what data we have access to. Sometimes there just isn't, it is what it is. There is no explanation or answer.
I understand what you're saying, but I disagree. I'm giving you the answer. You just don't like the answer. So the answer is there.
Your answer is that no matter how much we think or try, there is no answer to this.
No, there is an answer.
Other than to just leave it.
The answer is there are going to be some people in society who aren't given all the things, or who don't get all the things that that other people get. That's the answer. You're trying you're trying to create an answer, and that is that everybody will have equal access to all the information at all times. So you're trying to give the answer and figuring out how to get to the answer that you want, when that's not the answer to the question. The answer to the question is, this is the answer. You don't like the answer. So it's not realism,
right, from your perspective. From your perspective.
Exactly. But you're trying to point out that, well, there is a different answer. Well, there might be, but
you don't believe there is. Yeah, right, that's the difference.
But there may not be another answer. But realism says there's not an answer. No, I'm saying there is an answer, and you're not accepting of the answer. So you want to find a different answer.
Right. I get it.
You understand that
yes.
now?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. I got what you were going for there. I was I didn't get it at first, but that makes sense.
Okay. Well, I finally got around to explaining it well enough
yes,
for you and the listeners to understand where I was coming from.
I get what you mean. You're saying you still fit within that school of thought because you know what the answer is, but I don't like what the answer is. So that's you're looking for a different answer for it to be. I get the,
and that's where we differ is because you want the best, and you think there's a way to always get to the best.
I think
But I'm not saying that that's necessarily what you want is the best.
Well, and to avoid the words in my mouth, I want to be clear that I want things to be better. I'm not so naive as to think that it's possible in any realm of the near future. I mean, like the next several million years, for people to ever achieve this idea of, perfection or the best or whatever. No, I don't think it's realistic to even hope that everybody in society can have a chance and equal access to information.
But
I don't think that's realistic, but I think it is.
Why is that better?
Why is what better?
I'm not trying to put words. Why is that better? What you want us to achieve? Why is that better than what we have?
Because that's the country I've grown up in, and my idea of patriotism and what our country is about, and what I think the human race is about, which is we are, in part because we know we have a lifespan, we are always driven as a race. I'm not talking about individual people, as a race, to keep addressing challenges and things that are standing in our way of a better people, as a whole. Whether that's saving our planet, whether that's answering questions about why the world works the way it does, whether that's trying to feed children who don't have food, all of these things, the reason we do them, you can talk about self-satisfaction. I'm talking about societal level, as a race, is because we have a built-in biological imperative to adapt or die. So whether or not it's true that every problem we face is something that is a possibility of our extinction, I think that we view it, again, as a society, not as individual people, as these things are threats to our existence. Because in the society that we have right now, if kids go down this path that's less desirable as we view it in society, that is a threat to our survival as a race. It is a threat if people aren't working in good jobs and adding to the whole of society, contributing in what we consider a positive way. That is a threat to our existence, in one form or another, whether that's solving climate change or working the fast food lane so that the people who do want to solve climate change can get fed. It's whatever your, area is, everybody doing their part, so to speak.
Okay, we'll have to pick this up because my next question would open up another half hour show.
Yes. Well, and that's why I was saying way back when I was like, this is why this last one to me is always the most critical one of where do we draw this line?
Fewer people would mean there would be less likelihood of climate change.
That's right.
And of people being hungry. So it's good that people are starving and dying because, see, now I know we're going to get all kinds of listeners.
Yeah.
But it's not that I don't care, but there is an answer to your question as to why it is this way.
Less people means less to feed, so on and so forth. Less people also means less problems, means there's less to strive for, means that we go extinct because there's nothing left to try for. You're right. It's a whole other episode because there's a big old can of worms to open.
Survival of the fittest.
Of the other side.
That's my last comment. I'll let you say whatever you want. I'll just say goodbye.
Yes.
Survival of the fittest.
Everybody gives some thought to this. There's another episode coming because we went over for sure, but I knew I knew this last one was going to be the kicker because it wasn't the other stuff. Those were the those are the kids' questions that all the networks ask, right? Oh, do you support this band? But they don't get into this kind of thing because they don't want to open these.
48% of Americans feel, 42% of Americans feel.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So let us know your thoughts. Survival of the fittest. Are we talking about in relation to other people or in relation as a species? And see, that's what makes us great, right? Because everybody can answer that question differently. So, connect with us at TrueChat.org, Facebook, Twitter. Lance and I want your thoughts, boy. Tell you what, these are just two minds. Imagine there's 9 billion others out there. Oh, geez. Well, what could we come up with? Holy moly, more things than you and I could ever look at in a lifetime if everybody had put forward their own idea. So give us a few thoughts. Maybe not 9 billion. That might be.
We couldn't cover them all.
Right. That'd be a little
Probably
overkill.
Couldn't even read them all.
Nope. Couldn't get through that. So.
And I'm not sure there's that many people on Earth.
Right. Well,
yet.
We're
working towards
We're closing in. We're at 8 something. Sorry, rounding up. If you listen to this in a few years, maybe we're there. So. All right. So connect. Let us know your thoughts because we do want to know. And sometimes it gets us to think about other things. And that's part of what makes this show, in my opinion anyway, a good show is we're trying to test these areas that people don't want to test because they're not always comfortable to talk about or test. And there's a lot of places you can listen. And, if you're not listening, then you should tell some people to listen also. So share with them that they can access us pretty much any way they want, right, Lance? Because there's a lot of different...
On their phone, or on their computer.
Yep.
On their iPad.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. All those places.
All those places. And what platforms are we...
Platforms.
You mean like
the Stitcher, the Spotify.
Yes.
Apple Podcast.
Oh,
and wherever fine podcasts are promoted.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Excellent.
Basically, you want to listen to us, we're out there.
Uh-huh. And I applaud any of you.
Tell your friends and enemies because we'll take anybody.
Yeah. Tell them all. Come here. Especially if you're one of the people that doesn't like us, definitely tell your enemies because they'll like us, right? So that's the hope. Keep bringing them in.
Excuse me. Yes. We'll take anybody. We just want people to listen.
That's right. Don't forget Monday, food special. So we'll get away from this heavy stuff for a little bit. Food special. Tune in then. For the State of Us on TrueChat in Urbana, Ohio, I'm Justin T. Weller.
And I'm Lance Jackson.
Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time on the State of Us. Be the change.